This is going to be a comparison of all these amazing TVs. We have the 98-inch QM8 the 77-inch G2, the amazing G3, LG G3, 65-inch Sony A95K.
What's up? Come on in.
OLED, king of TVs last year. The popular favorite, I'm going to talk about that for sure, TCL QM8 and the Hisense U7K, the budget TV. Now, what our goal is not necessarily to say, hey, this is the best TV or the winner or whatever, but rather to let you compare everything. In bright scenes, right? When it gets dark, do you see my reflection? What are you paying for? Because oftentimes what you're paying for is not obvious in the image quality. I mean, a big thing is this Sony. It has amazing reflection, anti-reflection coating, but unless the lights are on and then you have these slightly dark scenes, you're not noticeable. You don't notice it, right? And you're like, oh, I'm gonna get the QM8. And then you walk in front of it and goes, wait, I see FOMO, like a mirror. And then in front of the Sony, and of the TVs, the Sony definitely has the best anti-glare reflection, or just reflection in general, right? And it's not evident. If I shine a flashlight, they all look terrible, but it's very subtle, just me walking in front of the TV. And other things like, well, even though this G2 is last year's TV, in some content, it looks identical to everything else. So our goal, and Brian is so good at this, he found some amazing content, is to go through different stuff that you're gonna see. And, well, Brian, what are they looking at?
What's up, guys? I mean, you guys are here in person. We're at MWAVE, Kansas City. We've been here for the last few days. We were live yesterday. You guys can ask questions who were here. We're on a live stream. It doesn't make a difference. The differences in the panel that we have a 90-inch Samsung QM8 MiniLED, 83-inch LG G2. We moved these around yesterday. We have a TCL MiniLED QM8, Hisense MiniLED U7K. Top left, we have the Sony A95K Quantum Dot OLED. Below that, we have the LG G3 with MLA technology. The reason that we have the G2 at 83 instead of a G3 is that the MLA technology has not made its way to the 83-inch size. No point in having a G3 this year. This is similar panel as to last year. What we want to illustrate to many of you, or you guys online as well, is we had these different yesterday where the OLEDs were on the inside. The camera and you guys need to be a little bit more dead center on the two mini LEDs to appreciate their picture quality. Off angle, they definitely struggle. There is a color shift. But what I will say is throughout the day yesterday, even though the A95K QD OLED is one of the best TVs in the world, there was very few people out of the 100 that walked in that preferred it. A lot of their eyes were drawn to the cheapest TV in the group, or one of the cheapest TVs in the group, which is very telling. And that was in all sorts of content. We ran movies due to copyright, as you know, on the live streams. We can't show movies or it gets taken down. But seeing them side by side in a bright room as well as a dark room is very telling. You can also say to yourself, at 98 inches, losing the detail, the control of the image, is that worth it to you? TCL QM8, the mini LED, you see here on the right. The Hisense U7K at the bottom. U7K is about $800 at that size. That's this panel here. QM8's about $1,200. But what I'd like to say is these two 65 inches are $3,000, roughly. The A95K was more expensive at launch, but you can get a QM8 at 85 inches for about $2,200. Now, what do you lose in that? Other than processing, fine detail, we have Jason Dustle here from AV Pro. Jason calibrated all the TVs. I should have mentioned that at the beginning for you guys watching. We are all calibrated. Jason Dustle, famous in the industry, cruiserweight champion of the world. He's here from AV Pro. We'll do an interview with him later talking about the equipment. But why I mention that is they are all calibrated. They are all in their most accurate preset. There's no extra processing. That said, with the TCL and the Hisense, there are limitations to his ability to calibrate. Things like edge enhancement on the TCL cannot be disabled. Is that important to you? It might be, because in certain scenes. We saw this with Mario yesterday. The artifacting wasn't just on the edges, it was within the image. But for half the price. G2 versus last year's G3 without MLA technology, the G2 going against the 65-inch version, not as noticeable. However, comparing the 77-inch G3 with MLA to the 83-inch G2, it is evident. The whites are just more impactful on the G3 with MLA. Want to pipe off the lights, FOMO?
Will do.
I'll do it.
No, I got it.
Which TV? They all call it something different, so it depends on which one you need. The LGs are in cinema mode. The Hisense is in theater dark. The TCL is
So for you guys watching
movie or cinema mode.
in the live stream,
Samsung's in movie mode. And
these are not easy demos. We're only doing demos due to copyright.
from there.
Now I have the U7K at home. I'm reviewing. That's the one on the bottom right. It does perform much better at my home. Not sure how our panel is here, though it's been calibrated. Definitely performs better, the one I have. Just letting you guys know that. Differences in blacks, viewing angle, color. Now being an MWAVE, what's interesting is almost everyone that comes in here has a projector or crazy speakers, great setups. TVs are a bit of an afterthought, but it's interesting, everyone coming in from projectors, we'll talk about the black levels for projectors and the brightness from projectors. Only be found on these TVs. Now with the LEDs, the QN90A, the TCL, even the Hisense are brighter than the OLEDs. But is that brightness something that is worthy or useful? If it lights up the whole image, takes away the fine detail, doesn't really help. We're in SDR here. What do you guys think? What TV are you guys looking at? Which one do you guys think looks best to you?
Actually, I like these two bottom ones over here. To be honest, this one's a little brighter in some scenes, but to me, this one I think pulls out more details and some of the richer color.
Okay. LG, that would be the LG G3 and the Hisense U7K. Corey, which one are you looking at?
Yeah, I think the LG G3.
Okay.
So,
Aaron?
noticing them swap from yesterday, like my eyes were driven to the G3 yesterday, but now like I'm more attracted to the Hisense. I'm looking at them side by side. I'm more surprised and shocked of how good that image is. And I don't know if it's because I'm dead direct on from it, and yesterday I was not, but like I would almost prefer that image more.
So for you guys that tuned in last night or yesterday, we did have the Hisense and TCL on the outside, which for the audience, even the camera is not capturing them on angle. The challenge is being off angle, no matter what, they both looked poor because of the different viewing angles. But what I like about the Hisense, what you're saying is that even the paler image is something that you're more attracted to versus the deeper saturation. We're going to move on to a demo with some star fields, see if we can find one. Quickly, we're going to go into a black bar test. This is from a good friend of mine, Jennifer Gala, out of Canada. She's a filmmaker. Typically, due to copyright, I can't show movies, but here, it's all about the aspect ratio of your favorite films. So I can show you full frame demos forever, but when you get it home and you go into a film, you see those black bars lit up. OLEDs are obviously completely black. TCL does very well on angle. Hisense does struggle. G2, QN90 actually does pretty well in this test. And if you were to stand up, which you can, off angle, things do change quite a bit. Now, for all you guys watching at home, the live stream, my Hisense definitely performs better at home. No question. So I'm actually going to wait till I get a third version of it to do a full review on it.
I think that's just panel.
Could be just the panel variation, because it is calibrated by Jason calibrated it, so it's not a settings issue. Local dimming is enabled. It just, mine definitely didn't look like that, so. But size-wise, what would you guys look at if you were to buy a TV? 65 is still considered the sweet spot for large TVs, though I am at the 83-inch heavyweight division. 77, all right, 77.
Mine would be like the primary. I'm looking at 55, 65.
Yep. So viewing distance is interesting, simply because we do say to ourselves, where you're sitting, you think that might be equal to where you are at home. Chances are you're much farther or much closer. If you game and you're leaned forward like I am, so this is an 83-inch OLED, I game on one, I am this far away. 6 feet. Now when I sit in this position watching movies, if I'm sitting up, it's 9 feet. Leaning back on a comfortable couch, where your chin ends, can be 12 feet. Just that little bit of a lean back makes a huge difference. Might make a difference for this being very clean or very soft. We also recommend, if you're jumping up in size from any TV, small jumps. 65 to 85 or 83 is a huge jump. It is. You will notice a difference in cleanliness or sharpness.
Would it reduce once we start jumping?
Say again?
There will be more noise we'll be noticing, right? Like the resonance will reduce once we go to 83.
It wouldn't be the noise, it would just be the pixel density. It would be that it's a little softer.
Oh.
You wouldn't notice as much noise. Yeah, noise and artifacting is more evident just because it's on screen, not because of the size. Screen uniformity is an issue on larger TVs simply because of the travel, but they're more noticeable. But softness, if you go from 65 to 75, it won't be as big. But going from, say, 55, which we've had people do that, they go right to 85, and they're like, what happened to my image? Fun, are you jumping in the camera at all or what? Or actually, let me show you guys the star field that you would see.
Sorry, I joined in the middle. What is this model?
This is the LG G2 at 83 inches. Oh, give me one sec. So we talk about specular highlights with TVs. Oh, hold on one second. We talk about bright LEDs, specular highlights, HDR impact. So when you encourage a brighter TV, you say to yourself, I have an OLED at a certain amount of peak brightness, but I have an LED at 2,000 nits, 3,000 nits. The thought would be specular highlights will pop. HDR will be more impactful. However, with LEDs, if you look at the screens of our mini LEDs, our TCL QM8, Hisense U7K, Samsung Q190A, don't look at the blooming for a minute, which is the light having a hard time with the zone count. Now keep in mind the U7K is not the top end model, it is the step down. But if you stand up and take a look forward, the specular highlights on the LEDs will look painted on. On the OLEDs, they sparkle. Fomo, you seen that on camera?
Which one?
Just the way the specular highlights on the star fields. Now, at times you'll lose stars. Everybody gets very fascinated with stars being lost due to crush. I'm more fascinated not only with the blooming, if you look off angle here, how they're all together. And see how the screen is?
You see it from this angle, it's really.
So now the QM8, again, one of the most popular TVs this year, hangs with the OLEDs in this particular shot. It absolutely gets decimated. If you look at the OLEDs, having that ability per pixel to light the image, turn them on, turn them off, look how bright just the stars are. They twinkle in a way. Now keep in mind the OLEDs that we have are some of the brightest ever made, but they still, in times past, OLEDs would be something you would leave because they're not bright enough.
You mentioned the U7K here, the Hisense, it's not the newest model. What's the difference between the U8K and the 7? I mean, it's the same.
U8K was just the next step up, has more zones,
Okay.
you know, more processing ability. However, again, my U7K does not look like this one. So I will say that till the cows come home. The one I have at home performs amazingly. Doesn't have this kind, so it could be defective. Unfortunately, we got to roll with the one we have. This one is brand new from Hisense. They're not cherry picked. Phone one, I don't work for any of the companies here. We have YouTube channels. That's essentially what we do. So.
Really see differences in the sun on this one. These two both are LG, right? How come this one has more warmer tone compared to this one?
Hold on one second, my friend. Say it again?
So I think this is G3 or this is
G2?
Okay. But this one has more warmer tone, right?
They're colored, they're calibrated exactly the same. So the colors are as close as you can get them. It may have a warmer tone. You may be seeing more color in the G3 itself, which you probably are. In flames, you can see in the G3 the white pushing through, but you can also see more orange. So it's the illusion of more color, higher color gamut, but it does show through. The QD OLEDs have more color, but a lot of people look towards the G3. As you'll also see, there's a bit more detail in the G3 around the clouds.
Right. Is it because of the size?
Nope, just the technology.
So
This lacks the MLA technology, that micro lens array.
the G3 is a significant upgrade to G2?
No. The G3, let me say that again. The G3 is a massive upgrade over the G2 at certain sizes, 55, 65, and 77. Not at 83. 83 doesn't have the MLA.
Oh.
So I would say, now massive, I shouldn't say that. Those of us that you know, we're splitting hairs, to me it's massive. But if you're someone who is looking at an 83-inch OLED, I will always tell you to go back last year.
Oh.
And the C series does not have MLA either. So, you know, it's hard to recommend going with one without MLA that's new.
Do you think there's like some sort of consistency issues with the product? Hisense, based on what you've noticed with yours at your home and this one here.
Yes.
Like, have you heard more of that in the field of like consistency issues with the product altogether?
So-
them being more dim or not looking correctly?
Yes. So I started the channel due to what we call the panel lottery. So in 2016, I had 11 defective panels. Starting with a Vizio P series, I moved all the way up to a KS9800 Samsung. Now you guys being in audio and video, you appreciate that I went from a $4,000 TV to a $12,000 TV. And what I tried doing was just spending my way out of it. And each one had dead pixels or issues. And it didn't matter if I went 3 TVs with the same manufacturer, each behaved differently.
Don't let him touch your TV.
That's true. That went. So, and for those of you in the chat, I just recently did a video called Samsung Why They Hate. So Samsung is the #1 TV in the world, brand in the world, most sales. FOMO and I have a Samsung S90C QD OLED, which is one of the more affordable and best OLEDs in the world. It's not as expensive as the S95C, but it's nearly as good. And it wasn't dead on arrival. It was calibrated, it behaved fine. HDMI inputs were moved in and out, and then it just died. It came back to life this morning, and it died again. So if the Hisense is struggling picture quality-wise, it could be a defective panel, meaning the local dimming is not working properly. That damn thing is broken. Does not power on. So not a big fan of Samsung and the taping of this live stream, simply because it's dead on arrival when it should be showing off. Because I think right now, if that TV worked, it would be the one you'd be more attracted to. simply because you'd see the saturation of Samsung, you'd see what they do best, and you'd see it as a quantum dot OLED. Where the A95K is a quantum dot OLED but has Sony's processing and its signature of accuracy, Samsung is more wild.
More vibrant.
More vibrant.
Yeah.
Now for Samsung, especially the QN90A, which we have here, it's been getting beat up in all of our comparisons simply because it's accurately calibrated into its movie mode. Most people that are attracted to Samsungs in the store
A bit more bright.
will simply watch it like that. Now, I'm not here to tell you that's wrong, but if you're walking in the room out of nowhere now, I think your eyes would be a little bit more attracted to the Samsung than before. So for all you guys in the live streams that we talk about calibration, the importance of it, keep in mind the picture settings, the different presets that you can choose from can make or break a TV. What I say about Samsung always is let Samsung run wild. Do not try to make it look like a Sony. So in movies, which we were showing yesterday, this thing looked so dull, it was unbelievable. Now if I go back to the beginning, now all of these TVs have different presets. You can make them all look brighter. Except something like the A95K, if you try to juice it, make it look brighter, it may look worse. And with you guys being projector guys, what's interesting is this is the future of size. TVs are invading that projector space. I personally think it's a mistake. It's very hard to have quality at this size. Ultra short throws are right there. Same size, $5,000 screen. What I like about projectors is that when you're done with them, you can unplug them, sell them, move on. TVs, very hard for you to say, who am I selling that to?
Lot of diminishing.
Well, more importantly, if you were, it's a couple £100, but even if you wanted to sell it, for instance, someone's coming to your home to look at it. So Facebook Marketplace, things of that nature, they're not easy to sell. So anything over 80 inches is yours for life. And being somebody who is in this industry who goes through TVs, there's only so many TVs you can give away. It sounds ridiculous. 65-inch TVs, 55 people will take them. I'll take it. Granted, they're thousands of dollars. 77-inch TV, you'd be surprised how many people will say, oh, we lost our Fire Stick. How many people will say, I don't want it, it's too big. Or I can get that same one at Costco. And you're like, oh, really? This one was $7,000. Oh, no. I want the one from Costco. And then next, you know,
It's
yeah.
about just the size, right? Generally, Facebook Marketplace is more about the quality of the product. So
Absolutely.
I moved from 55 to 65, 65 to 77. So
Yeah.
I lost the place. Where should I keep 65 when I'm moving to 77? So I tried to sell it 65 in Facebook Marketplace. C9, I think.
Yeah. So you'll say, look, I have an OLED for you, and you know,
$400.
how much you want for it? Oh, $400. You're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Jay, I keep losing the Fire Stick.
Well, why are you doing that?
I don't know, because it's a high-end piece of technology. So the bane of our existence as YouTubers is copyright. So I'd love to show movies all day. We have 1 million movies here. We have 1 million movies on. It'll get struck down, which would happen to us yesterday during a live stream. If you hear that rumbling in a live stream, that is, what's the brand next door to us, Foma? What's next door to us?
The JTR.
GTR, right? Yeah.
JTR.
JTR is next to us, yeah.
I keep losing it, Jay.
Keep losing the stick, huh?
Yeah.
Power cycle.
On the stick or on the switch?
The stick. Fire TV literally just keeps moving.
All right. You know what? Why don't we you want to pop on the lights for me, Jay?
Looking at the wall, you're right.
It's still steaming. What we're gonna steam for now.
So, Foam, if you want to talk while I get the source back.
Let me turn on the lights.
Yeah, rattled the Fire Stick to death.
Yeah, right.
There are a lot of drywall dusts in all the stuff. shootouts, then I'm sure the complex is like, what?
Those micro solders, I'm sure, have held up well over the last 36 hours.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it.
While we wait here, can we just briefly talk about like warranties between like Hisense, LG,
Sure.
Samsung? I mean, are they almost equal across the board? Or
Um,
new TV?
LG with the G series will have a 3-year, is it 3-year FOMA?
5-year.
5-year.
Panel replacement doesn't include labor.
So 5-year, but then for the rest of them, it's your 1-year warranty manufacturer. That said, that's why, you know, we always recommend, even though you get the good deals from Green Toe or anything like that, you know, if it's not an authorized dealer, you will void the warranty.
Can't beat that warranty. It's 5 years.
No. 5 years for that one LG, that's it. The rest of them aren't. That's also why places like Costco, Sam's Club, they have, you know, you have the 1-year warranty, then you have another year. No fault. Places like Best Buy, if you're an elite member, you might have a 45-day window. I think Target's 10 days. It's not a lot of time, you know. And it's not about the TV failing. It's about screen uniformity issues, dead pixels.
Peace of mind, dude, it's kind of really consumer.
Yeah. So we recommend whenever.
Spending that much money on a really nice TV, I want to make sure that
Yeah.
I have a peace of mind that if anything does happen.
You can see here in this demo too where the light stays, where it doesn't. With the QM8, which is the top right, mini LED for the price point's doing amazing.
What was the price of that?
What's it, 1200 for the 65?
1,200 for the QM8.
For the QM8. So we're looking at 12, 8, G3, A95 are about 3,000. The A95 is also a year old. I mean, it's actually a year old this month, I believe. Came out last July.
For the price? Yeah, I can see why everyone wants that one.
Yeah. Because you do the math and then say to yourself, for 85 inches at 2,000. Now, why I bring that up as well is for $2,000, if it lasts 2 or 3 years, you won't be devastated. You'll say to yourself, don't want it to not work, don't get me wrong. But you might be more apt to move it into another room and be okay with it versus something that's $6,000 or $7,000. Now, being home theater nuts, guys that have large towers, large speakers, there is such a thing as a TV looking ridiculous if it's 65 inches surrounded by towers that are my size. And people do it. I saw some pictures while we've been here. Now, gaming is a huge aspect of this. The TVs all have different gaming features. G3, G2, 4K 120 hertz. NVIDIA G-Sync. QM8 and the Hisense can both do 144 hertz due to processing. Samsung 4K 120. Sony you can game on, it has the capabilities, it just doesn't have the flexibility of image. So the picture settings don't look much different no matter what you do in terms of gaming. Looks good, but you can't make it look outrageous or more subdued. LG, you can have it look more saturated, more vibrant. But having them calibrated the way we have them is completely an even playing field. Where with us on YouTube, you never know if the person's like, all right, well, this one's in standard, this one is here, this one is there. Jason's right in the room. And Jay took how many days to calibrate them?
I got here Tuesday evening and started super early on Wednesday morning. I went till about 8 o'clock Wednesday night, went till 8 o'clock Thursday night, and then right up until we did the meet and greet at the very beginning of the event. What was that, 6 o'clock on Friday?
On Friday, yeah.
So almost 3 full days.
So about 3 full days for Jay to calibrate them. And then yesterday when we all left, Jay hung back, watched some movies, and then checked the settings, and they did drift in that period of time.
Very common for a brand new out of the box for the color to shift a little bit while it's still breaking in, as we
Yeah.
like to say. And they typically stabilize after a certain amount of time. That just depends on the technology, but
Yep.
general rule of thumb that we've lived by for many years now,
200.
really hasn't changed, is about 200 hours.
Yep.
And that's a normal use. That's not just turning it on and letting it run for multiple days in a row.
Yeah.
That's, turning it on and turning it off and letting it warm up and cool down and just normal use.
So if you guys can't hear Jay because he's not mic'd up, we're talking about break-in was the old adage was 200 hours. And that's still the thing. But Jay was here for 3 days calibrating them all. We talk about contrast ratio. With OLEDs, we talk about micro contrast ratio. Talk about the blacks living within the image, not just on the outsides. We look at black bars, that's what we think about for black levels.
Do you have that iguana breathing fire demo? You know what I'm talking about?
Iguana, I'm sure. The problem with some of the demos too is the reason you see these, they're all copyright. They're fine, either my friend Jennifer or LG. So no one knows this at home, but there are certain creators who not only will YouTube copyright it, the creator will try to strike down the channel just for using their stuff once. So you talk about micro contrast is the blacks that live within the image of fur, skin. And it's funny that over the years, OLEDs never looked white. They always had a lightish blue, and on camera, they're still gonna be blue. But you can see where the G3 is actually presenting as close to white as, more so than the mini LEDs. We never thought we'd see that. Apologize for that, put that back. FOMO, what are they saying?
They're saying the G2 looks dimmer.
Dimmer than,
And because it doesn't have it layer, right? That's why a lot of people don't get that.
nope.
This is all new because we are so into the community, right?
Now, those of you that follow my channel, G2, what's up, Bri? Come on in. The G2 with MLA, G2 without MLA, you guys are noticing it
Earlier or later? Because we're either going to go now.
at 65 inches versus 83 inches. In my video, 77 versus 83, it was much more evident.
So anyway, so about 3.
You can see that the G3 was clearly brighter than the G3 at 83 when they were larger.
Okay. We found the local controls so that we put
You can see in these shots here. What's wrong, FOMO? You see how much brighter the G3 is, even in the quantum.OLED.
G3 versus G2.
G3, so those of you guys watching, G3, G2, we had them closer together yesterday,
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
but
See ya.
looking in this area here on the G2, and then here on the G3, it's like it's sleeping. Now the G2 is one of the brightest OLEDs ever made as well. Now it would have been interesting if our S90C was working to see how the G3 compared with that. FOMO, can you speak a little bit on what the S90C would have done had it been in here?
Explain what?
How the S90C would have done had it been here.
Ah.
In comparison to, say, the G3, which obviously we see in this shot. FOMO, look at the G3 here.
Let me explain that.
And for proof of life, I want to just show the fans. Am I in frame? Can you see me?
All right, let's do this.
So I want to just say for Samsung, thank you so much. This is an S90C, and we do have it here.
Got the best black level.
The best black levels, completely off. So ours failed yesterday,
So
but I wanted to show you that it's here.
we'll talk about the technology improvements, right? Even though there's nothing on.
Well, quickly for these guys, the S90C is not the flagship quantum dot OLED. The S95 is. However, FOMO has tested both of them. Where the S90 is dominating is in price and performance compared to the S95. Why we wanted it here versus the S95 is we were both confident that the S90C would outperform the G3, or at least come close for, what's the fraction of the, it's a big difference in price.
$1,000 less.
$1,000 less. That's
So
why
the
we wanted it
77
here.
inch is like what, over 4,000. This is under 3,000, around there. So it's $1,000 price difference. That goes down. But here's the irony: the S95C uses the One Connect box, but that bandwidth is limited on the One Connect box. On the S90C, for PC gamers, not everyone else, don't worry about it, but it's become a big deal for a lot of people. Even though I've confirmed with Jason, it does not affect image quality in most games, unless you're on a PC doing 144 hertz and there's not that good match. You shouldn't have an issue. But for content watchers, not a big deal.
But if we're talking about performance, what would the S90C have done in comparison to the G3 and the A95K?
So
How would it look in comparison to them?
that's a great point. The A95K wasn't perfect. It was the first QD OLED release of Sony last year, as well as the S95B. So the S95B, for its part, it was bright, but the color accuracy was still, it was not quite there, and it wasn't bright enough. Some people wanted to be even brighter. So the S90C directly addressed that issue with brightness. It is a little bit brighter at the 77 inch. At the 55 and 65 inch, it's still very similar to S95B, because in comparing it side by side with the 77 inch S95C, both of them same in every way except in sports, where the S95C slightly brighter. Definitely not worth $1,000. And if it wasn't side by side, it would have been acceptable. Now the G3 has, well, the G2 had a problem. When it went head to head against the Sony A95K last year, it lost, and mostly because of brightness, right? Like right here on the Sony, it was a little bit brighter, had a bit more color, and it was obvious enough that the G2 lost. So LG went back to the drawing board and said, okay, how do we address this shortcoming? And so they added what's called the MLA in a color booster. The MLA is Meta Micro Lens Array, which is a layer of tiny little lenses that magnified the brightness, right? It focused the scattered light directly, recouping a lot of that lost light. And so it made it brighter without spending more energy, and also raised the color luminance to a certain degree. Now, most people say, well, this G3, I keep on pointing to this. Most people say this G3, because I keep looking at this G3 looks terrible. What the hell am I talking about, right? This G3. As you can see, it's actually matches or is brighter than the A95K in certain scenes. This was designed to be the A95K, and it would have, right? At the shootout, I told LG exactly where their shortcoming was, and they literally addressed it. But unfortunately, guess what? The S95C and the S90C came out this year to then take the next step past. It's arguable. So here's the other problem. In normal content, the G3 and the S90C, S95C are identical. We're not talking about Dolby Vision because that's a different format. But in normal content under 1,000 nits, you would not be able to tell the difference. In darker content, there's complaints of near black crushing on the G3 if you notice that, but you could address it with raising the shadow detail, this and that. But natively, the WOLED does have that near black issue it's been struggling with from the beginning. QD OLED does not have that issue. As a matter of fact, QD OLED near black has very fine contrast points up to black.
What's up, bro?
If that's important to you in a dark room. In a bright room, it's irrelevant. Both will look like it's crushed because the room is so bright. But for enthusiasts, they want perfection. The QD OLED is the way to go. The G3, however, above that near black in a dark room, in a bright room, the G3 is actually brighter for sports content. So they wanted to take that extra step. In comparing the G3 sports content, SDR, football, hockey, brighter than the S90C and a match for the S95C, sometimes brighter than the S95C in bright sports content. Now with hockey, it depends because it's so, it's white. OLEDs will never get as bright as the QM8. if you guys are sports aficionados, you don't care about this back detail or whatever, or the blooming stuff that you saw, right? The stars aren't sparkling. But if you're watching sports, you want the score, you want to see motion resolution. This is the TV because that's what it's designed to do. The common man watching football on an 85-inch TV, super bright, $2,200. No TV will touch it for value. And even the G3 at 83 inches doesn't even come close because the MLA is limited to only 55-inch, 65-inch, and 77 inches. And QD OLED is the same, 77, 65, 55. You go to 85, this is the 83-inch. You see it's a drop down in brightness in some scenes. And this is as bright as it's going to get. But in full screen sports, it gets even dimmer because it's, it's a full screen. ABL, you've heard of it, right? Automatic brightness limiter. What it does is, if it takes a scene, I call it power balancing. It's a combination of how much energy does it take to put out this much brightness, because the entire screen is limited in energy consumption. I mean, this screen, let's say it has 10 watts available to it, and I'm making this up. Where do you put the 10 watts? You can put it into brightness here. If you make the whole screen super bright, it's going to be super dim because you don't have 10 watts. So what it will do is some parts of the screen will be slightly dimmer, so it can make this slightly brighter. The G3, because of its higher efficiency, it could do more with those 10 or 11 watts. The whole screen could be a little bit brighter.
Camera's down.
Volume's out?
Your camera died. Camera overheated.
Okay. So that's a big difference, right? I'm going to address that. All right, Brian, you're back on.
What's that?
Is the audio dead?
I guess so. They just saw the camera just went off.
Oh, man. I tell you.
Is this one mine, Jay, or you got yourself?
All right. I'll fix the camera right now.
Oh, that's not mine. Oh, this is me.
Need a water cooler.
Any questions?
Ready for the calibration here.
Oh, yeah. Geek out fast.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Nice meeting you, bro.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming, guys.
You want to have Jay talk to the people about the calibration?
No, it's good.
Are we did?
Yeah, so you may continue. Let me turn off my audio so you can talk
We'll
without.
have Jay talk about the calibration.
Oh, yeah.
That works too.
You got 5 minutes, buddy. Camera's back on. I just have to. I don't know what's wrong with these things. Weird. We're good now.
Just whatever's safe, it doesn't matter.
Check.
Am I okay? Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yeah. We can hear you.
My badge is not rubbing against the microphone? Because that's always fun.
Can you turn the lights on for Jay?
Yeah, what did you guys want to sort of talk about? The gear that we used and that kind of stuff? Yeah. Let's give the people what they want. I could ramble on and on and on, but
And then you and I are going to shoot the video separately.
oh, do a separate one?
Okay,
Cool.
so Jason, real
Yeah,
quick,
sure.
when you're calibrating, so this is a lot of things that people ask about.
Yeah.
When they say the TV is calibrated, what does
Right.
it mean? Because we know that the TCL QM8 has limited calibration settings.
Mm-hmm.
So when that is calibrated, how is it less calibrated than a G3 or a G2,
So-
which has full 3D LUT, all these amazing settings?
Our goal-
Because, technically they're both calibrated.
Yeah, our goal is to get this consumer TV as close to a reference monitor as humanly possible. And the reason we do this is to preserve the original intent of the artist who made the film. What we run into when we talk about things like calibrated, but still not being able to hit certain parameters, for example, the display might not give us a control to fix a deficiency, or it might give us a control to fix a deficiency, but the control doesn't work very well. Sometimes you go one click up, it goes way too high, one click down goes way too low. So you have issues sometimes with the granularity of the controls too. So at the end of the day, if you were to calibrate two TVs, put them next to each other, and all things considered equal, they should look pretty darn close to each other. when you're looking at TVs all in an array like this, you can start to tell, if you know what you're looking for, you can start to tell where some of the TVs fell a little short compared to some of the others. So the whole point of it is to get them all to look as close to each other as possible, and using the reference monitor as a frame of reference. Now, we don't have a reference monitor here, unfortunately, but the good news is when you calibrate, we know what the standards are, so we just calibrate to that, put them all next to each other, and see which ones do well versus the others. But that's when you start to see the subtle differences, and that's when we're being very nitpicky about some of these things, but that's the point of it, to see what the differences actually are. But if they're not all in the same playing field, then it's hard to judge them. So hopefully that sounds about right. Yeah. Now the process in doing this can vary wildly from display to display. I'll give you a great example. We talk about the Sony A95K. Really nice TV, really great controls. Guess who makes the broadcast monitor, or I should say the professional monitor, that all of our movies are made on? It's almost always a Sony. So Sony has this whole thing going for them to where they're making the monitors and they're also making the TVs. So they'll cross over from what they do in some of the professional monitors. They'll cross that controls and some of those things over into the consumer monitors. So if I sit in front of a Sony, I can usually get it dialed in really, really well in maybe 30 or 45 minutes. And other TVs take longer than that because sometimes you have to fight them a little bit and just work with what controls they give you. So a Sony like that one might take 30 or 45 minutes. The LG gives us a lot of control over calibrating it. So depending on how crazy you want to go, you could spend hours on that one if you want to. Things like the Hisense and the TCL, they give us pretty good controls to work with. They're a little finicky with certain things, but you can usually get them dialed in fairly well, as good as they can be at least. Samsung's had really good controls for quite a while. They have their own little quirky things, but you can usually get those dialed in pretty well. But again, none of them are perfect. Even the professional monitors that we deal with in studios aren't perfect either. The point is just to get them as close to the standard as possible. And the story does not change whether you're talking about a TV, a computer monitor, or a projector, or it's really just any display device. So in our world, in home theater and consumer electronics, the goal is to match the director's intent. And how do we know that? Because we all use the same test patterns and we all use the same reference points for color. So yeah, that's about the quick and dirty of it. Yeah. Now, in order to get the job done, there's a few tools involved. We'll take a quick look at those. They should be right about here. So the first thing that we need, and this is where I would always recommend somebody to start. Oh, go ahead.
And when you talk about the tools, mention also about brightness. So there's a lot of misunderstanding. People are asking always, what's the peak brightness? What's the peak brightness?
Sure.
And I know you tested a test pattern,
right?
But give us some context. Just because the TV hits, let's say 5,000 peak brightness or 3,000, right, in real content, over the air, streaming, TV, HDR, it doesn't matter. How does that affect the viewing quality?
Think of it like this. I might have a car that can go 350 miles an hour. But if I never take it out of eco mode or never press the gas down all the way, I never get there, right? So think of it as, the TV can be 3,000 nits, 5,000 nits. But if it's not told to play that bright, then, who cares? But what we need and what we're getting now is content that can actually show that bright, of that level of detail at those brighter levels. So in other words, if I have a piece of content where some flash or something in the movie peaks out at 4,000 nits and the TV can do 4,000 nits, that's where we're really going to see the TVs taking advantage of the TV's peak luminance. But there's other things you could do too. If you don't calibrate it and you want just a really bright picture because it's a living room or something like that, then perhaps all of your content will be really bright. But the peak brightness thing is, it's almost like peak power on an amplifier. How useful is it? And we really need the content to be able to fill in those gaps. But we're getting there. There's lots of movies now that are being mastered brighter and brighter and brighter. I saw we put in a movie yesterday, and I think it peaked out at like 720 nits, I think, at its brightest scene. So any modern TV can handle that no problem. But don't forget too, the spec is written for 10,000 nits, and we're not even remotely close to that now. So we've got a lot of room to grow here.
So, you know, one day we'll have some 10,000 nit TVs and some 10,000 nit content, and everybody will be happy. And also, too, while we're on the subject, it's not just the overall brightness of the TV. It's for things like explosions. You know, if you're looking down a dark alley at nighttime in a downtown somewhere, and there's a car down the alley, and they press the brakes, and the brake lights get really bright compared to the surrounding area, that's how our eyes work. That's how HDR works. So a lot of it has to do with the content and the settings that you're using on the TV, and just there's a few moving parts to it. But you know, what we're really looking forward to are things like explosions and fireworks. And there's a demo that I saw recently where there was like a aluminum airplane flying, and there was another plane flying next to it filming him, and there was a reflection from the sun off one of the wings just for a split second, and it got really bright for a split second, just like real life. So that's the ultimate goal, is to get to 10,000 nits, but we're hovering between 4,000 right now with